Welcome back to World History. Today, we're learning about the Islamic world in Chapter 12. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so Chapter 12, we're going to learn about an area called Arabia, or sometimes it's referred to as the Middle East. And so we'll get to know it in a minute here. You'll need to know what an oasis is and why they become nomadic. I assume you know what a nomad is. If you don't, we'll learn that. But why? Why does this region, why would it be inclined to having nomads? And then they'll join in a caravan, and then we're going to have a new religion called Islam. Their founder is Muhammad, and their book is the Quran. They worship in a house or a place called a mosque, okay? And then they'll have a law called Sharia law. So those are all things. Make sure you take some good notes. Pause this video if you need to. We're going to keep going. Oh, please note your book spells it one way. I've seen it spelled another way. No problem. Okay, your course objectives. Who was Muhammad? He is the central figure or central prophet in Islam. What is a major difference between Muhammad and other religious teachers? Okay, most of our previous religious teachers were in charge of the religion. Muhammad is in charge of both the religion and he's a political leader. So he runs, they don't have like a country yet, but it would be like running the country and running the church at the same time. Hopefully that makes sense. We'll iron it out. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. And then what are the 5 pillars of Islam? I just want you to know that there are 5 pillars. You don't have to memorize them. Okay, it's a new chapter. So what's the first thing we're going to learn about? It's back. All right, geography. Here we go. So make sure you write this down. We need to know where the Persian Gulf is. I don't think that's technically a sea, but it's in the category of water. Anyhow, Persian Gulf, Red Sea, Mediterranean Sea. We have some countries, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. And then there's some cities, Mecca and Dubai. All right, Mecca and Dubai. So let's take a look and start learning where these are. Oh, Mediterranean's back. Hopefully you know where that one is. Okay, so here's the world on the left, and you can see where the Middle East is. And we got some friends we can start spotting right now. So the Red Sea, personally, I think of it as like a peace sign, and it's kind of ironic because it's sometimes not a peaceful area. Other classmates were saying that this thing right here, and then you put like a shell on its back, and it looks like a snail. I don't know, but there's Red Sea, okay? You have Mecca right there. I know I've made a mess of this. Here's Mecca. That's a city. What else do we need to know? Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran. Let's get it to where the map is clean again. All right. So let's go through our geography. We have the Red Sea. Check. We have the Persian Gulf over here. Check. And then the Mediterranean Sea up here. Awesome. And then we have some countries. Here's Saudi Arabia. Here's Iraq. Here's Iran. And this little guy here is the United Arab Emirates. Very much an up-and-coming place, and that's why I want you to know about it, okay? And then let's do the cities. Here's Mecca, and then Dubai is right here, okay? So if you got that down, you're good to go. Let's keep rolling. Do you remember what this red line represented? We learned about this a while ago. What was this red line, this trade route? Okay, it's called the Silk Road, right? Okay, awesome. So the reason I bring this back up is because the Middle East is going to sit strategically between Asia and Europe, and they're going to be important for trading. Okay, the river floods. Remember this? Just kidding. The river does not flood. There's no rivers. It's a giant desert. So we can take a look at what we're talking about here, this Middle East region. There are no big rivers, okay? But physical geography influences human geography. When you have rivers, you're going to want to irrigate. When you don't have rivers, what are you going to do? Okay, so let's take a look at this Arabian Peninsula. Giant desert, no rivers, very hot, could be 113 to 130 degrees. So this is their physical geography. How is that going to influence their human geography? Let's find out. Okay, they're going to have these little oases where it's a wet and fertile area in the desert, a little bit of water. So there's water over here, water over there. Because there's no river for you to develop next to, you're going to move around a lot. This is why they're nomadic. This is why they have caravans. They're going to be moving to the water. Okay, so how does this influence people? We just talked about it. You're going to have to stay mobile a little more than someone else would. So the nomads, they live in the desert. They raise sheep, goats, camels.
This is the great Ubari Sand Sea in the heart of the Sahara. These swallows have travelled 1,500 miles since they left Nigeria. Their superb powers of navigation will eventually guide them to Europe, but now they and other thirsty migrants need to find a speck of blue amidst this ocean of sand. And here it is, al-Ma. Here too, ancient groundwater wells up to the surface. But the birds need to be careful, for the sun has played a terrible trick. This oasis is poisonous. Intense evaporation over thousands of years has left the water saltier than the sea. As if to underline the horror, the place is infested by vast swarms of flies. But this plague is a bird's salvation. The flies are filled with fresh water, filtered from the brine. So, like a desert wanderer squeezing a drink from a cactus, the birds get all the water they need from the flies' bodies. More and more migrants join in. Wagtails.
All right, so it's very harsh, very difficult to survive in the desert. Hopefully you've heard this word. If you haven't, it's called a mirage. When the sun heats up the earth and the earth is radiating that heat back off, it kind of distorts your vision a little bit, distorts the air, and it can look like water. And so you're wandering in the desert and you look over the horizon and you go, finally, some good clean water, but it's really just a mirage. All right, what's a caravan? So you've got these desert traders, these nomads. They'll link up and they're going to move stuff around. And they're going to be, you can see in this bottom right picture, the camels. That's just called a caravan, okay? A group of traders that are traveling together. Okay, the Arabian Peninsula is important for global trade. Historically, I showed you that map where it connected the Silk Road to Europe, right? Connects Asia, Africa, and Europe together. Today, the Middle East is a major exporter of oil. And so that oil is used both in products and to transport products. And so that is how the Middle East, it's kind of, I think it was Mark Twain that said history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So back then, they would be trading between these two regions, and now they facilitate trade by providing oil. It's kind of interesting. Okay.
For centuries, the Arabs held camel races to celebrate special occasions. But in the last 50 years, camel racing has been transformed, echoing changes that have swept all across Arabia. Now, this is one of the richest sports in the world. The winner of this race stands to win $1 million. The prize money at stake means that 21st century camel racing has moved far beyond anything these camel handlers' grandparents could have imagined. In today's camel races, modern technology is in the driving seat. Literally. To save on weight, jockeys have been replaced by robots, weighing no more than a laptop. The camel trainers drive alongside. They scream instructions to their camels through a speaker on the robot. The frenzy is added to by the fevered excitement of the race commentator, broadcasting live to the nation. When an extra burst of speed is needed, each robot carries a whip, which the trainer operates by remote control. In today's Arabia, camel training has become a sophisticated business. Scientific breeding and state-of-the-art training have turned these camels into elite racing machines.
All right, so there's a little bit of a blend between old and new. So let's talk about Islam a little bit. The religion is called Islam. People that follow Islam are called Muslims. The book is called the Quran, okay? So this is something that's interesting. You don't have to look these pages up. I'll just tell you. If you were to turn to these pages in your book, it would show you the different religious leaders that we've talked about. So it would show you a picture of Buddha, Lao Tzu's quasi-religious leader, Jesus at the Last Supper. But there's no picture of Muhammad, okay? You're forbidden to have a picture of Muhammad. So let's watch a quick video about it.
Images of the Prophet Muhammad have sparked anger from Muslims around the world, but also protests, riots, and in extreme cases, violence. But why is that happening? Islam strictly forbids the worship of idols. Take a look at mosques around the world. Some are elaborately decorated with complex geometric designs, but not one has the image of a man in them, much less of the Prophet Muhammad. One of the central tenets of Islam is that there is no God but God, and Allah is the creator. In some of the strictest interpretations of Islam, any image, from cinema to painting, is deemed blasphemous. According to Islamic scholars, The Prophet Muhammad preached that he was simply a man, a messenger for the word of Allah or God, not to be revered himself as any sort of deity. This has been interpreted in Muslim tradition to mean that any image of the Prophet Muhammad is strictly forbidden. Now, Muslim images of the Prophet Muhammad do actually exist. As early as the 13th century, Persian art did have depictions of the Prophet Muhammad as well as the angel Gabriel and other biblical figures, but those images are exceedingly rare, and over the centuries, religious interpretations have changed. This is why even a simple image of the Prophet Muhammad can be seen as offensive to Muslims, because it strikes at a central tenet of the religion. Even worse, an image that is drawn in insult, even as satire, is deemed deeply offensive. Supporters of satirical magazines and cartoons such as Charlie Hebdo believe that freedom of speech protects their right to depict such images of the Prophet Muhammad, however offensive they may be. But opponents say such images are aimed at deliberately insulting Muslims and even to incite violence. In the digital era, any image can be transferred around the world with just one click, exacerbating the controversy over images of the Prophet Muhammad to global proportions in just minutes.
All right. So, according to religious writings, the angel Gabriel comes down, speaks to Muhammad in a cave, and says that there is one God, and this message is the basis of Islam. There is no God but Allah. Okay, Allah means God. And so Muhammad, he has to move from Mecca to Medina because he says that the rich people aren't giving enough money back to the poor. Later, his house becomes the first mosque. Okay, a mosque is a house of worship. So it says right there, where did the Hebrews worship? They worshipped in the synagogue. So there's different words for houses of worship. There's church, there's synagogue, temple, mosque. Okay, they just kind of all match to different religions. Okay. All right. So he is both the spiritual leader and the political leader, and that is a main difference. Okay. So he'll be a general. He'll have an army. He'll be in charge of, the political landscape. That means more of like a governor, if that makes sense. So he's part governor and part religious leader. So they'll go back and they'll fight in Mecca. So he has to retreat from his home in Mecca. He goes to Medina. He gains strength there. He gains power. Then he brings people back and he captures. Okay, so these are the 5 pillars of Islam. You don't have to memorize them. Just know that they exist. Okay, the statement of faith, there is one God and Muhammad is his prophet. Praying 5 times a day. You'll see people turning towards Mecca, and then they pray 5 times a day. You're supposed to give to the poor. You fast during Ramadan. We can talk more about that later. And then a Hajj. I sort of want you to know what a Hajj is. You have to travel to Mecca once in your life if you can. And we'll talk more about that later. Okay, Sharia law. This is again interesting. It's Islamic law based on the Quran. In the West, we have separate laws. You have a civil law. Okay, the law that you obey, that's the traffic laws or the law that the government puts upon you. And then you have religious laws, but they're separate, okay? In Islam, the laws overlap, and that's called Sharia law. So let's pretend you have a church, and they say you can't drink Pepsi, okay? That you belong to a church that says no Pepsi. Well, that doesn't mean the police are going to come to your house because civil law and religious law are different, okay? But when they're intertwined, that could mean the sheriff would come to your house. Hey, I heard you're drinking Pepsi. Does that make sense? Okay, I know that that's kind of an extreme example, but we separate religion and state, and they intertwine them, and that makes a difference. Okay. The Sunnah is the record of how Muhammad lived. If you remember in Judaism, we had the Talmud. How am I pronouncing that? Talmud. Okay. Religions usually have a holy book, and then often there's a book about the book, and that's sort of what this is. Okay, this is something that's interesting. that I really want to talk about, and that is jihad. Okay, it can mean a variety of things. It means struggle, it means holy war, so it can mean a war within yourself, a struggle to obey God. Or it can mean a struggle to defend the community from outsiders. Or it can mean a struggle to convert people to Islam. There's lots of definitions. In the West, we primarily hear about the terrorists. They're in the cave and they're waging war and they're calling for a jihad. And so that is the definition we hear the most often, but it can also mean these other things.